here to talk to you today about March's Patchwork Block Builder box. I hope you've received yours in the post and are raring to get going. If you haven't received one and would like to take part, there will be a little link below where you can grab one of your boxes or the pattern. So this month we're working on a lattice block. So we're still working with the same shapes, squares and half square triangles, but we have increased the difficulty by making these shapes smaller, so you've got more of them to work with, so more seams to worry about and more cutting out to do. So hopefully this month we can master those shapes, ready to get moving on to something a little bit more intricate next month. Without further ado, let's go and have a look at what fabrics were included in this month's box, and let's get sewing. If you had our Tilda box, you would have had this beautiful blue floral from the Woodland collection, along with some of the Dove White solid. If you went for Alison Glass, you would have had this beautiful star print, along with this soft white and green blender. And if you went for traditionals, then you would have had these two beautifully traditional fabrics in your box. In your box you would have also got your colour match thread for each of your options. You got your pattern booklet, so for this month this is the Lattice pattern, and as ever on the front of your pattern booklet you get to see, if you made multiple blocks, what a quilt would look like. And as you open your booklet up, this is the block that we are working on. Along with your instructions you also get your template for if you're going to do the English paper piecing version, along with your card, and you also get your templates for your foundation piecing if that's the method that you're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to get my fabrics cut out, and then we will join you ready to get these blocks constructed. We have got all of our 4 shapes cut out, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get our 4 light squares, and we're going to sew those to 4 of our darker squares down one side to make a unit that's going to look like that. So we'll do that with those. And then with our triangles, we're going to get a light triangle and we're going to get a dark triangle. I'm going to put those right sides together as well, and then we're going to sew them until we've got 4 units that look like this as well. Okay, now we've sewn all of those together, all I'm going to do is just snip those apart from the chain piecing, and then we're going to give those a little press. Okay, so now we're going to press the fabrics to the dark, so we'll set the seam. I just do these slightly off from one another so all the seams aren't on top, but then when I place the clapper on I can just do it all in one go. So the process of this clapper is taking the heat out and really setting those seams, and it just gives you a really nice crisp seam. It's worth this little bit of a step, and we want to do exactly the same with our half square triangles. Now you want to be delicate with these because we have cut these on the bias, so they will stretch out of shape. I gently pull that there, can you see the stretch? Because this is across the 45, it's across the bias. So if we're not careful we can very easily stretch these out of shape. So remember, you're pressing, you're not ironing. Sorry, that sun keeps trying to blast through. That is the start of spring coming. And then we just need to take that heat out of those seams, make them lie nice and flat. Okay, so we now need to square up these half square triangle blocks. So if you've got the Alpha ruler, the 9.5 inch Alpha ruler that I talked about last time that I recommended with this beautiful frosted back, it has got this line straight down the centre. Many other rulers have it as well, and this is the line that I recommend using to square these blocks up. So we're going to square these half square triangles down now to 3 inches. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 3-inch line along the 2 outside edges, and the diagonal should go perfectly down the seam in the middle. If it doesn't and it's a bit off, that just means that when you have ironed your half square triangles, you've stretched them slightly. So just square up 2 sides and work from there. So we're just going to pop that down there. And then just twizzle our board round. And then all I'm going to do is just take off that dog ear on that side. And repeat that process for the rest of your pieces. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to place our block out so we can see which bits we're going to sew together next. If you look at the illustration, over here we've got a checkerboard. So we know we're going to put those two like that. And then down in this far corner, again, we have got another checkerboard. So those all get sewn together like that. We've also got a square here, a square here, one here, and one here. And then we've got these half square triangle units that slot in here. So that's going to be what our completed block's going to look like. Okay, so now we need to pair off and get these sewn together. So these two here, we will put right sides together. And we're going to sew down here. The same with this one. Put those right sides together to sew down. Those will pop on top and sew down, and we'll repeat exactly the same process here. So over the top to sew down there, over the top to sew down there, and over the top to sew down there. So let's jump on over to the sewing machine, let's get those sewn. All I'm doing here is nesting the seams. So we've got one seam going one way, one seam going the other way. We're just going to push those against each other so they lock, and then that's just going to help aid us get those perfect points. Be afraid to stop and reposition. And then I'm just going to cut my thread there because that's the first row done. So that's the first row chain piece. So I'm going to place that back on my mat, and then I'm going to start with the second row. So again, just grabbing these, I'm going to nest that seam. So these are the bits we've chain pieced. So if we open them back out, then we should still be able to recognise our block just as before. Marvellous. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to snip the threads in between, and we're going to press each one of these blocks. So we've got our 4 patch blocks. So again, just press them to one side. A really nice press. And then we can just take the heat out of that one. And now we're going to press these little units that we've made here. So again, we're going to press these and then take the heat out with the clapper, and we're pressing the seams to the solid square. Okay, so now we're going to bring back in our checkerboard blocks, and we're going to square these up to 2.5 inches to either side of the centre. So I've got the 2.5 inch line right in the centre there. Just square that one up, and we'll do that on all 4 sides to both pieces. So that's both of those squared up for you. So now we're going to bring these units back in, and we need to square these up. So what we're doing is we're cutting the dark side only, and we're going to cut these to 2 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so now we want to create 2 units. So we're going to place those there, and we're going to place that one there. So we're going to sew along here, and we're going to sew along here. So again, we're going to nest those seams, so just by pushing them against each other, because one's going to the left and one's going to the right. Lovely. So then we'll open those out and give those a press and get ready to square up again. So here we are back at the pressing mat. Just give them a nice press. So we'll bring our cutting board back in, and we're going to square these up exactly the same way that we squared the checkerboard blocks up. Now we should only have to trim 2 sides of these. The other side should be perfect from the trimming up that we did earlier on the block. So we can just check by popping the ruler on there. And yeah, perfect 5-inch square. If you haven't got one of these rulers yet, I would strongly recommend getting one. They're just going to make your patchwork life so much easier. So now we're assembling the block. First thing that we'll do is we'll sew this down here, and we'll sew this down here, and then we will sew those 2 across to create our completed block. Here is our finished block. How beautiful is she? So when you place your 9.5-inch ruler on there, she should be exactly the right size. So if you put your ruler on there and yours isn't quite the right size, there could be many reasons for this. It could be maybe your block isn't 100% flat, so give it another iron. Press it down with your wooden clapper. This really helps to get your blocks flatter, and the flatter your block is, the larger it's going to become, and then it should become true to size. If you still find you're struggling a little bit, then just double check your seam allowance, because we're squaring up each block as we go. By the time we get to these blocks here, we've squared those up to 5 inches. So when we sew them together, it should be perfectly 9.5. If it isn't, and your block is perfectly flat, then it's your seam allowance. Your seam allowance isn't quite 1/4 inch, so be a little bit, if your block's a little bit too small, be a little bit scant on your 1/4 inch, and hopefully then you will get the perfect block. So now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk you through the instructions on how to complete your block using foundation paper piecing. Okay, so these are our foundation templates that were included in your box. If you're new to foundation templates, do make sure you go back and check out our video last month where I went into a lot more detail about them. We've also got our fabrics pre-cut here, so we've got our dark triangles, our dark squares, our light triangles, and our light squares. So we're going to start off with piece A here, which is a dark square. So as before, we're going to place that dark square right sides up on the wrong side of the paper, and the next one we're going to go with is A2. So we want the piece to finish to look like that when it's sewn. So what we're going to do is we're going to place that over the top there. So we've got this piece lined up along the edge of the fabric. This piece is going directly on there and lining up with the fabric here. And I've got a flat head pin, and I'm going to pop that through there so that when that piece is sewn, it's going to cover this dark triangle here. Can you just see that underneath? So when we turn this, we're going to sew straight down that line there. So I'm going to do these in a chain piecing method. So we've got that one pinned ready to sew, so we're going to put that one to one side. Then we're going to move on to this one here. So we've got D1 and D2. So D1's a light square, so again we're going to turn this over. I'm going to place that one there, and D2 was a dark square, so we're going to go right sides together, again lining up along here and along here. We will pop the pin in, ready for us to sew straight down this line here. Let's have a look at this next piece. So we've got C1 and C2, which again is a light square and a dark square, so we'll grab those. C1 is the light square, so we will turn that over. We will pop that light square there, lining up along the two edges there, and our dark square directly over the top, lining up along here and along here. And we'll pop that pin through there, and if we just turn it over, this is the line here that we're going to sew down. And then our last template here, so we've got B1 and B2, so they are a dark square and a dark triangle. So again, we're going to turn this round. We're going to put our dark square right sides up, lining it up along here and along here. I don't know if you can just see that triangle through the paper there. So we want this piece to finish like that. So we're going to put it right sides together. So we've lined up along here and along here. And we're going to pop a pin through, and if I just turn that round, we're going to be sewing straight down this line here. So the line that we sew is always the line between the two numbers that we're working on. So at the moment we're working on square 1 and square 2, so that's the line that we're going to sew down. So let's hop on over to the sewing machine and let's get those sewn. So with foundation piecing, what I would do is I would always decrease my stitch length to about 1.4, 1.5, and the idea of that is to get more stitches per inch so that it's perforating the paper and makes it much easier to pull the paper out later. And I always change my foot to an open toe foot so I can get a really good look at that line that I'm sewing as well. Okay, so now we've sewn down the line that's between section 1 and section 2, whether that be squares or triangles. What we're going to do is we're going to flip that over, take the pin out, give that a little iron to set the seam, open it up and press that down. Take that heat out a little bit. And then we're going to set the next one. So now we're going to move on to number 3. So number 3 on this one's a dark square. So we're going to place that over the last square that we've sewn, lining up one edge and two edge. Pop the pin in, and we can place that next to the sewing machine. And then we'll have a look at the next one. So the next one is a dark square, that's number 3. So again, we'll place the square over the right side, lining up along here and along here. Once you get the hang of this method, it will all slot into place and you won't even need to listen to me. You will know exactly what you're doing. So next month we're going to start to move on to more trickier shapes. And we're going to start to do some seam trimming as well. Whether I get you to do that next month or the month after. Just keep giving feedback on these blocks so I know kind of where you're up to with your abilities. See what you're struggling with, what we need to work on a little bit more. So the next one is a light triangle that's going here. So if you just see there, A3 is a light triangle. So we're going to place this triangle on here. So we're lining up this edge here, and we're also lining up this edge of the triangle here. Pop the pin back in, place that to one side, and the last piece here. And the next one here again is a light triangle as well. So we're going to place the triangle over this triangle, lining up this edge here and lining up this edge of the triangle. Popping the pin through. Now on each one we're going to sew down the line, whether that be a triangle, it's a triangle on that one, on this one it's straight across there, and on this one it's straight across there as well. So again, exactly the same process. We're going to take the pin out, we're going to give it a little iron, take the heat out, and we'll set up for the next one, which on this one, number 4, is a dark triangle. And if you just hold it up, you want the triangle to finish, so it's like that. So we're going to line up along here and along here. This is piece C. The next one I'm showing you is piece A. The next thing we want for A4 is a light square. So we're going to line up along here and along here. Pop the pin back in, and I'm going to show you piece B. The next one we're looking for number 4 is a light square. So again, we're going to line that up along here and down here. Pop that to one side, and the last one we're going to grab hold of is D, and the next one we want is a dark triangle for D4. If we just hold that up, can you see the direction that we want that to go? We want it to go there, so we're going to go right sides together, lining up this edge, lining up along here, and we're going to pop the pin in. Ready to sew. So now we're going to sew through the line that's between number 3 and number 4. So on D it's going to be this one, on C it's going to be this one, on B it's going to be this one here, and on A it's going to be this one here. Now you've guessed it, exactly the same process as before, so let's start with piece A. Take the pin out, set the seam, iron it back nice and flat. Take the heat out the seam, and then we want a dark square for number 5. So again, we'll line it up along here and along here. Pop the pin in. And now we're going to look at piece B, and again we want a dark square. Right sides together, line up along here and along here. Piece C, and now we want a light triangle. We want it to finish there, so we're going to go back right sides together, lining up along this edge here and along this edge here. Pop the pin in. And lastly, we've got piece D. So we're going to line that up along here and down here. And then we're going to sew the line between number 4 and number 5. So directly across here on D. On C it's the same. On B. And on A. So now we've sewn all those, we can just take the pin out of each one and give each section a press, ready for squaring up. Okay, so now we've got all of our pieces sewn on and we've given it a really good press. We're going to square up this block. So we want to square up 1/4 inch from the solid black line all the way round. So we're going to do that on all of our pieces now. So I do the 2 sides first. And then the top and the bottom. Tripod legs in the way. Okay, so now we're going to lay our block out. So the first piece we're going to put down is A. A is going to be matched up with D. And then we're going to put C down. And then B is on the end. So we've got A, B, C, D. Okay, so you're going to sew A to C and B to D first, straight down the centre. Then we'll give those a press and then we'll iron these 2 blocks. Okay, so in exactly the same way we did with the regular piecing, you can see the way that these templates have been formulated is so that the seams nest. So on this one you can see the seam allowance is going that way, and on this piece here the seam allowance is coming down this way, so that when we push these next to each other the seams nest beautifully. Because we've squared these up to 1/4 inch from the black line, when we line these 2 edges up, we know when we sew through the black line on the front, we're going to hit the black line on the back. Don't be afraid to stop, reposition, make sure you're completely lined up. And we can just check we're happy with the points on that piece, and they are absolutely perfect. Okay, so now we're going to press those in exactly the same way as before. So now we have got our 2 sections. We're now going to sew those together straight down the middle in exactly the same way that we have just done. So I've just sewn that down. Now I'm just giving that a press in exactly the same way as before. And then just take the heat out that middle seam to make it lay nice and flat. And there is our completed block foundation piece. So in your boxes you also got the templates for if you'd like to English paper piece this, and I have gone into detailed instructions in the instruction booklet on how to do that. If you're not familiar with this method, then do check back last month's video where I go and do a full demonstration on how to sew those pieces together. For now, I'm going to get the blocks sewn up in the other colourway so I can show you what they should look like. I hope you've really enjoyed making your lattice blocks with me this month. Now I've sewn up the blocks in all 3 colourways so you can have a closer look to see what yours should look like. This is the traditional colourway. This one is Modern Brights. And lastly, we have our tilde block.
I do hope you've enjoyed sewing those lattice blocks with me as much as I have enjoyed designing it for you. Do let us know how you get on with your block. We love to see your completed blocks and get feedback so we can ensure that we are increasing the difficulty just enough so that you're going to continue to enjoy sewing your blocks with us. If you would like to take part in this month but you haven't got a box, then do check out the links below, see if there are any left, and if there isn't and you do want to take part, then do drop us a message, let us know, and I will try my very best to get you something sorted so you can take part too. Do hit the subscribe button, really helps to get us seen. And I will see you next month for next month's block. Bye!